Tea time. Did you hear about the 73-year-old man who mysteriously drowned in Georgia's most haunted lake? Matthew Mayo was fishing with his wife in a boat in Lake Lanier when he went to sit down in his seat, but the seat mysteriously unbolted itself and he fell into the lake and never resurfaced. His wife watched the entire thing in terror and they had to use radars to find his body. Since 1994, there have been more than 200 mysterious deaths at Lake Lanier. This is a man-made lake that covers a city with a terrible past. Lake Lanier is located in northern Georgia. It's now a vacation spot that attracts millions of people every year. Lake Lanier is the former site of a city that was called Oscarville. In 1912, a white woman was assaulted and they placed the blame on a black man even though there was no evidence. A mob of angry white men picked this man up, tortured him, beat him, and mutilated him in front of everybody. But that wasn't enough. They decided to go even further by going to every black church and every black business in the entire city of Oscarville and burning it to the ground. Every black resident of Oscarville was forced to leave the city, and soon after, the town was completely abandoned. In 1950, when developers saw that this was an abandoned town, they decided to turn it into a vacation attraction, and instead of knocking down all of the buildings and getting rid of everything, they just flooded the city, covering up its entire history, including the cemeteries. Many believe that Lake Lanier is a death trap, and that it needs to be drained and spiritually cleansed, or it will continue to claim lives year after year. Rest in peace, Matthew Mayo, Lake Lanier's latest victim. I'm Tierica with the T. Follow for more.
Y'all wanted to hear more about Lake Lanier? So let's talk about some unsolved cases that has happened over the years at this haunted lake. Now today I'll be talking about a Georgia man that goes by the name of Kelly Nash. And he was 25 years old when he went missing from his home in Beaufort, Georgia on January 5th of 2015. Now this is old news, but it's still unsolved and very weird to me. Now early that morning around 4 a.m. he woke up having flu-like symptoms. And he told his girlfriend named Jessica, who was with him at the time, that he felt terrible and that he probably should go see a doctor before he went back to bed. So his girlfriend woke up again around 7:30 to find out that he was gone and he didn't take his wallet, his keys, nor his ID. So when he still haven't returned that evening, police were called. But it was also discovered that a 9mm pistol was missing from his house as well, but his other belongings wasn't. So he didn't bring his car keys, he didn't bring nothing else, but supposedly the pistol was missing. So the search went out involving authorities, family, friends, dogs that can, sniff up bodies. And it was a $50,000 reward offered for anybody with any type of information. Yet no trace of the man and his whereabouts was found. And it was not until 1 month after his strange disappearance, on February 8th, Nash's badly decomposed body was found in Lake Lanier by a fisherman. What? And he was still wearing the pajama pants and the shirt that he had on when he went missing. And although the body had appeared to have no major trauma, it was found that he had suffered a single shot to the head. And the crime has literally never been solved. And it is unclear why he chose to go in the middle of the night in his sleeping clothes and how he ended up in Lake Lanier. So whether he did it himself or it was a foul play involved, or even if the lake's alleged curse have anything to do with it, it's still very sketchy. But his death wasn't the last of the freak accidents and phenomena that has taken place at this lake over the years. So let me know if y'all want to hear more freak cases and strange accidents that has taken place at this allegedly cursed and haunted lake.
I tried to stitch this lady video, but TikTok didn't let me, but I'm going to still tell my story, okay? This is about Lake Lanier, 6 to 7 years ago. I went, my friend invited me. I didn't know these people, but I went anyway. It was good vibes, right? It was like one of those days where it's like too perfect, like scary perfect. Like everything was just flowing. We on yachts, we drinking Hennessy, like we cheersing. It gets so good, people start jumping in the water, y'all.
This one thinks go for a turn. So it's like 4 people in there. Everybody gets out except for this one girl. She's swimming or whatever. And she starts to struggle and look at us. And we're like, oh, my God, she's drowning. Like, somebody help her. So this one guy, he's pretty lit. But he's like, nah, I know how to swim real good, blah, 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 blah. All right. So he jumps in. So we thinking, okay, he going to save her. And he does, okay? He does save her. She gets back on the boat. But he didn't get back on the boat. And I'm like, what's going on? I kid you not. There's a button down there at Lake Lanier. Like a little button that they push. And must be cameras. Because, baby, when I say people drown at a certain time, and that water was just swirling so hard, more than ever. And it was that one little area. Something's going on down there. So he's swimming. We throw him a donut. We like, come on, get back, get back. He's missing the donut because the water's so hard. It's swirling, literally like a tornado. Do you know this man did not come back up from the water? We call the police immediately. They come an hour and a half later. Are you crazy? That boy is way gone under the water. I don't know where that water took him, but he never came back up. His baby moms was there. His sister was there. That man was loved, and I never told that story because I always felt like it felt like a dream, and it felt like unreal, and I couldn't believe that I was there to see a man to watch someone go underwater and not come up. It's life-changing. I'm sorry, but I always felt differently about water ever since then. And I never told that story. I don't even know if I told my family that story because I think I did, but I didn't go into depth of how it made me feel. That shit right there, you gotta stay away from Lake Lanier. Like, for real. It's not for us. It's a setup.
Lake Lanier is infamous for the deaths of more than 200 people in the past 3 decades, including Usher's stepson. Let's talk about it. Lake Lanier has been labeled dangerous on several occasions, but primarily because it is a man-made lake and there are buildings, towns, boats, and countless bodies below the surface. A once thriving Black town called Oscarville, comprised of successful Black carpenters, farmers, and blacksmiths, is submerged within Lake Lanier too. This past year marked the 11th anniversary of Usher's stepson Kyle's death at the lake. Tamika Foster, Kyle's mother and Usher's ex-wife, made a petition to drain, clean, and restore the lake. Kyle Glover was 11 years old on July 16, 2012, when he was struck by a personal watercraft, aka a jet ski, while floating in an inner tube on the lake. He spent 2 weeks in the hospital where he proceeded to have no brain activity and succumbed to his injuries on July 21st. A close friend of the family's was convicted to 4 years in prison for Kyle's death. May he rest in peace. If his mother's wishes do come to pass about draining the lake, there's no telling what will be discovered in those ghost-filled waters.
You ever had a run-in with a ghost walking across a bridge with no hands in the middle of the night? Lots of people have. She's known as the Lady of the Lake in Lake Lanier, Georgia. Let me tell you all about her. But first, let me give you some stats on this gorgeous, gruesome lake in Georgia. Between 1994 and 2022, over 200 people lost their lives by drowning here. In addition to the 200, another 48 lost their lives due to boating accidents. They estimate that since its inception, over 700 people have passed away here. And let's not just graze over the fact that they had to disturb 20 cemeteries to construct this lake. So obviously, out of that huge number, there's bound to be a ghost or two, and the most infamous one is the Lady of the Lake. Now, she comes from a story that dates back to the 1950s. Delia Mae Parker Young was traveling with her friend Susie Roberts in Susie's 1954 Ford. Looks a little something like this. The two had just left a local roadhouse called the Three Gables. They were traveling across the Lanier Bridge. When something happened, they lost control and went into the water. Now, they were never able to find the car when this originally happened, but they could tell that something happened because there were skid marks that went towards the railing. But other than that, they were at a loss. But then a year later, a fisherman found a body and it was missing both hands and several toes. But they didn't know who it was. They couldn't tell. They didn't have the technology to do that back then. In November of 1990, they had to dredge the lake to try to put in new pillars for a new bridge that they were going to build to replace the old one, and they found this, Susie's car. It's the shell of a car, but behind the wheel was still the remains of a human, which by the things in the car, like her rings and a purse, and they were able to identify that it was in fact Susie, which meant that the lady that they had found years and years before was Delia. 3 decades, Susie was trapped in the driver's seat of this car, 90 feet below water, hidden amongst the mud and the tree trunks. Over the years, hundreds of people have claimed to see Susie walking around on the road, across the bridge with no hands, and I think that she was just trying to get them to continue to look for her because she knew that her friend was still trapped in the car. Have you dared to swim in the ghostly waters that's known as Lake Lanier? Have you ever had an encounter with the Lady of the Lake? If you enjoy videos like this, like, comment, share, follow for more.
It is my personal preference not to go because I've heard so many stories. Every year on the news there are things happening. Of course, it could be coincidence. It could be, okay? I went one time with my ex-husband and we were swimming. I was completely in my right mind, wasn't doing anything not to be in my right mind, if you get what I'm saying. And I thought he was behind me, pulling me up underwater. And when I would get back up above water, I would look around and he wasn't behind me. And I thought he was just going under. I thought he was playing a trick on me or whatever. Well, finally, when I started screaming or whatever, I heard him holler my name. And he is way over here with his friend about 7 or 8 yards away from me. So I don't know what was pulling me under, but I've heard stories from people saying the same thing, that they felt something pull them up under there. So if you've been to Lake Lanier and you've had similar situations, then let me know. But I do know people that go every year and they love it, and that's fine if they love it, but it's just a personal preference for me. I ain't going. I ain't going. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I'll tell you one thing, it wasn't a fish. Because I thought his hand was wrapped completely around my ankle. And I remember this vividly, and it's been like 15 years. So I'm not doing it. I ain't doing it.
Hey y'all, happy 4th of July. I hope you're enjoying your day. So today I wanted to surprise you guys with a creepy story because it's a holiday, and because this particular story is based in the United States and it's actually about a lake called Lake Lanier. So I've never actually visited Lake Lanier, but I have heard really crazy stories about this lake. And I actually have a friend that lives not too far from that lake, but they don't have any creepy stories because they're just too afraid to go and visit the lake. Okay, so I'm going to share with you guys a bunch of different stories from different creators, and you guys let me know if you've ever visited Lake Lanier before, or if you plan on visiting, especially now because allegedly, or quote unquote, they're going to open a water park at the lake, which to me is crazy because this lake is literally responsible for taking over 300 lives, probably maybe 200, but definitely a lot of people have passed away on that lake. So I don't know why they would even think about opening up a water park there, especially because a lot of children are going to be around that place because it's a water park, obviously. So yeah, let me know your opinions on this. Have you ever experienced anything at Lake Lanier? Do you live next to it? What have people told you about it? I love things like this, and I hope you enjoy, and I hope you have an amazing 4th of July. Let's get to the video.
This is a story about my son who drowned in Lake Lanier. Netflix is actually set to release something based on a true story in September of 2023, but I don't think this is going to be included in their documentary. As a former New Yorker now living in Georgia, I had heard whispers about Lake Lanier, but I mean, I was a non-believer, honestly, and we decided to go and spend a day at the lake. At one point, myself, my son, and my personal assistant were all in the water. Now, we were in Margaritaville, which is like a kid park, kid side of the lake. For context, this is actually what the water looked like. Well, this is how it appeared at the part that we were at. We'd been in the water for about 45 minutes, and I yelled to my assistant that I was going to go grab some water and be right back. Grabbed my water, turned around, saw my assistant, and did not see my son. I immediately dove in the lake and started looking for this red shirt, and found my son floating at the bottom of the lake. One of his legs appeared to be suspended, as if something had grabbed a hold of it. So I recovered his body, ran to the shore, and called for lifeguards. The lifeguards came, started administering CPR, and summoned the park rangers. So this image is him on the back of the park rangers pickup truck while they are still 7 minutes in attempting to administer CPR. They would continue to administer CPR for another 3 minutes. Once we were able to get a pulse, we were then transported to Metro Atlanta Pediatric Trauma Center. So it's important to note that my son actually has sickle cell SS. So when we got to the hospital, we were advised that we would need to do an immediate blood transfusion because he had ingested the lake water, which has bacteria, as any lake does. And so we needed to do a blood transfusion to help his body fight any infections that he would get from the lake water. I'm running out of time. Follow for part 2.
What happens in the 1940s and 1950s, including